Yuki Tsunoda said something on the radio during practice that showed us how serious he is right now.
And now, Yuki Tsunoda exits the pits and gets his go.
Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda gets his opportunity. There's the green light at the end of the pit lane. We're looking on track at a massive moment for Yuki Tsunoda. He replaces Liam Lawson for the rest of the season. Yuki Tsunoda's in the car. He's in the Honda Racing colours, special one-off livery for this weekend, paying tribute to the first Honda car to triumph in Formula One, Richard Ginther, back in the 60s.
It was his first time driving for Red Bull at his home race. After a lap that was 4/10 slower than Max Verstappen, Tsunoda called it a bad lap right away. He also gave a lot of feedback about the car. When his engineer told him about other drivers' times, Tsunoda said, "Let's focus on ourselves." Man, he sounds really focused and calm. Friday practice at the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka was full of interruptions and confusion, mainly because of 4 red flags during FP2. These stoppages made it very hard to judge which teams and drivers were truly performing well. The track was cold and windy, and conditions kept changing throughout the sessions. Some people even got sunburned despite the low temperatures. That's how unpredictable the day was. One of the biggest storylines of the day was Yuki Tsunoda driving the Red Bull for the first time. Normally, he drives for the Racing Bulls, but for this Friday, he was put in the Red Bull car, while Liam Lawson took over Tsunoda's usual seat. Everyone was watching Tsunoda closely because this was a big opportunity for him. In FP1, he was only 1/10 of a second slower than Max Verstappen, which was very promising. Max is the top driver in Red Bull, so to be just 1/10 of a second behind him made people take notice. But FP2 was a different story. Tsunoda didn't get to do a proper qualifying simulation because of the red flags. The session was constantly being stopped, and drivers couldn't complete their planned programs. Tsunoda ended the day lower on the timesheets, but the result didn't reflect his true performance. He wasn't smiling as much after FP2, and it was clear he didn't feel completely at home in the Red Bull yet. Lawson, who moved into Tsunoda's Racing Bulls car, seemed more comfortable. The Racing Bulls car looked strong on the track. In fact, some people watching from the track side said it appeared very stable and easy to control. That's a big deal because when a car is stable, drivers can push it harder and go faster without taking big risks. This was especially noticeable because the Red Bull car seemed more difficult to handle on this particular Friday. Lawson said something interesting during interviews. He talked about how good the Racing Bulls car felt and how it had a wide performance window. That means the car works well in different setups and weather conditions. In contrast, Red Bull often operates in a very narrow window. That means their car is either perfect or difficult to drive with little in between. In China, Lawson had mentioned how tricky the Red Bull was, so his comments at Suzuka showed just how different these two cars are, even though they come from the same organization. Max Verstappen, even though he is usually calm and focused, didn't sound too happy on Friday. He complained about strange car behavior. He talked about flexing, which could mean the car's structure isn't stable during high-speed turns. It's unclear if this is just how he's feeling or if there's an actual mechanical issue. Either way, it was unusual to hear Max sounding uncomfortable, but this isn't the first time Red Bull has had a rough Friday. They often struggle in the first practice sessions and then come back stronger on Saturday and Sunday. Suzuka is also one of Max's favorite tracks, so he's expected to bounce back. While Red Bull and Racing Bulls were dealing with their own issues, McLaren looked very fast. Their car was smooth through the corners and had great speed on the straights. On the timing sheets, McLaren had the best headline pace of the day. They looked the most stable and quick across all 3 sectors. Their drivers were able to push without too many mistakes, and the car responded well to the track conditions. The best of the rest behind McLaren was George Russell in the Mercedes. His performance was one of the strongest surprises of the day. In the first sector of his fastest lap, he was actually ahead of both McLarens. That's very impressive, considering McLaren looked dominant. Russell kept good speed throughout the lap, though he lost a little time in sectors 2 and 3, but the gap wasn't massive. In comparison, Ferrari was more inconsistent. In Sector 1, Ferrari was quite close to Mercedes and McLaren, But as the lap continued, the performance dropped. By Sector 3, Ferrari was around 0.3 of a second slower. That's a big difference in Formula 1, where every tenth matters. One possible reason for this drop in speed is how Ferrari is managing its ride height. If the car is running higher off the ground, it could be losing rear downforce. That would make it harder to keep the car stable through corners, especially the fast ones in Sector 3. Mercedes looked better balanced. They didn't seem to be struggling with tire wear as much as Ferrari. Tires are a huge factor in practice because they affect long-run pace. If your car uses up the tires too fast, you lose speed quickly, especially in race conditions. That might be Ferrari's problem. On the other hand, Mercedes seemed to get more life from their tires, which is a good sign for Sunday's race. Going back to Racing Bulls, their performance on Friday surprised many people. One of their drivers ended the day third fastest in FP2. Even if that result was helped by the timing of the red flags and others not finishing their laps, it's still a huge result. Just 1/10 of a second slower could drop a driver to 7th place. That shows how close the field is in the midfield. But Racing Bulls seem to have a solid baseline setup. Their car works well in these kinds of conditions, and the drivers feel confident. That makes a big difference. Jack Doohan's crash during the Suzuka weekend was also a massive setback, not just for him, but for Alpine as a whole. The mistake was clear. Jack failed to deactivate his DRS before turning into Turn 1, which made the car unstable and caused a high-speed crash. This wasn't during a race. It wasn't even during qualifying. This was a practice session, and the crash came with a heavy price. He had not driven in free practice 1, which made the situation even worse. The lack of early track time added extra pressure, and when his chance came, he couldn't deliver a clean session. Jack Doohan needed a solid weekend. There has been pressure building around his name for months. Since the start of the 2025 season, Alpine has struggled to deliver results, and that's led to many internal changes. One of them was the decision to give their reserve driver, Ryo Hirakawa, a chance in FP1. Normally, a young driver like Doohan would benefit from that seat time, but Alpine chose otherwise. Their reason? They wanted to keep Pierre Gasly in the car for benchmarking, especially after 2 poor opening races. They believed Gasly's data would help guide changes to the car's setup. This decision left Doohan on the sidelines during FP1, and that turned out to be a big mistake. Without FP1, Doohan was behind from the start. Track conditions change quickly, especially in Suzuka, where grip and wind can vary from session to session. The first laps on Friday are always about learning the limits. Without that time, you're jumping into FP2 cold. When Jack started pushing in FP2, he was doing it without any warm-up, and that's where the mistake happened. He activated DRS on a flying lap, but forgot to switch it off before entering Turn 1. DRS is useful on straights, but dangerous in corners. The car lost rear stability, spun out, and crashed into the barriers. And this was not just any crash. It ended his session completely. The car was badly damaged, and more importantly, Jack lost a huge chunk of track time. Alpine had to spend the rest of the day repairing the car. For a young driver already under scrutiny, this was a nightmare scenario. It raised more questions about his readiness and made the media headlines across the paddock. So don't hesitate to comment down your thoughts on this. And next, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this next video even more, so you might as well check it out.